Hello, this is DC Hammer, and this is the DC Hammer Show. So, the negotiations are continuing between the United States and China. This comes to us from ChinaNews.net. So, China and the U.S. are to hold the 8th round of trade talks in Beijing. And the spokesperson for Communist China is saying that the trade negotiations with Robert Lighthizer and Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and beyond that there's Peter Navarro, who's also the assistant trade representative in these negotiations, negotiating with the Chinese and trying to come up with a way to level the playing field in order for the trade between the two countries to be reciprocal and even and fair after decades of the Red Dragon taking advantage of previous administrations. Mnuchin and Lighthizer will be traveling to Beijing and trying to actually polish up the details between the two countries of this trade deal. And their delegation led by Vice Premier Liu He, I guess, Louis. Hey, Louis. And so he'll be coming to Washington for the next round of talks. And the whole direction of this is by April to be able to pull together a deal that will be signed in late April at a summit at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, President Trump signing on the bottom line with President Xi. Zero Hedge is reporting that Guaido in Venezuela, who is the opposition leader with his government in waiting, they've apparently in Venezuela, Maduro has pulled a page out of Andrew Weismann's book, and as this article indicates, that Guaido's chief of staff has been detained by Venezuelan intelligence in a pre-dawn raid. So apparently they've been watching the YouTube videos of what's happened to Roger Stone up here in the United States and pulled a page out of that book and decided to deploy men with weapons to Roberto Marrero's place and detained him. Robert Marrero is Guaido's chief of staff, and so apparently is being held hostage, or that's detention, I guess, as they call it in Venezuela. And they also detained a lawyer for Guaido. Maybe this is their Michael Cohen counterpart. So Maduro has repeatedly threatened to arrest Guaido and his staff, and apparently they're working from the bottom up. They've arrested his chief of staff. Who knows what's going to happen next, as it appears that Mueller-style American Inquisition justice has been inserted into that poor failed state in South America, a bastion of socialist enterprise. The New American indicates that although in Central and South America there have been these moves towards socialism, communism, Marxism, take your pick, and they have been making strides in those countries, but lately, in the past few years, there's been a fight back, particularly after President Trump was elected in 2016, and the new leader of El Salvador is not only now vowing to help with the border crisis, but is also shunning American aid. The president-elect of Salvador, Nayib Bukele, does not want American handouts anymore. He simply wants the United States to do more business with his nation. So the art of the deal has come to El Salvador. This is the home of MS-13. And is it possible that Trumpian philosophies of how to bring countries back to reality after standing on the brink of destruction with Marxist and deep state forces taking control and leading countries to the brink of destruction? The president-elect says that he has much common ground with the United States and with President Trump, and even though they do have some areas of disagreement, they have several areas of agreement. And this is a quote from the new president: "We know the origin of immigration is lack of opportunities and violence in our countries. That is the origin of 90% of our immigration. I say our countries because I include Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. So what is the solution? You could do 1,000 counter-immigration programs, but none of them will work as well as developing opportunities in the countries where immigration originated." There's the secret. Capitalism, freedom, liberty, the ability to make and generate and keep wealth. And once they start doing that and pulling back from the socialism that was forced into these countries decades ago, you will create these movements of independence, and the people will immediately realize the benefits of earning their own money, keeping it, competing amongst each other, and not having to flee their native countries, trek dangerously through other unknown territories to get to the United States and flood in here. And if you doubt that this is spurred by Marxism, communism, Bukele is the first president in over 30 years to come outside of El Salvador's two-party duopoly. In other words, a country ruled by two different parties, kind of like the United States, the Democrats and the quasi-Republicans. The country has been significantly dominated in past decades by the Farabundo Marti Nacional Liberación Front, the FMNL, which is a Marxist-Leninist terror group backed by the mass-murdering regimes ruling Cuba and the Soviet Union. So breaking away from that, the new president-elect of El Salvador realizes that the way out of this, the way to benefit his country, the way to reverse this flow of people leaving his country, is to create economic opportunity within his own borders and distance themselves from what has failed in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, replacing those failed communist dictatorships with nationalist, independent, democratic leadership. And so he will continue, the new president of El Salvador, to struggle with leftist philosophies and people that have been raised in the belief that Marxism is the way to Valhalla. But it appears that Trumpian success is infiltrating even to Central America. The Geller Report, Pamela Geller, is reporting that, I guess, at times you actually bite the hand that frees you. An illegal alien, criminal, who was released by the insane policies of Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, after being released through their sanctuary city lunatic policies, bit off the finger of an ICE agent as that ICE agent was attempting to apprehend this guy one more time. So as Bill de Blasio, who is a leftist extraordinaire, buddying up to Linda Sarsour, a proud leftist backed heavily by the Muslim community in New York City, as he continues to drive that city into the dirt and to support even the communist Sandinistas and the murderous Robert Mugabe in what is now Zimbabwe. It used to be Rhodesia. Robert Mugabe, when he took over the country of Zimbabwe, of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, took over all the farms from the white farmers, murdered the farmers, raped their wives, threw all of the farmers off of their lands, confiscated the land, sold the tractors and anything else that wasn't nailed down, and then burned down the farms and turned Rhodesia/Zimbabwe from, again, a thriving agricultural success into a failed, now Marxist state. That's one of Bill de Blasio's heroes. And as the sanctuary policies of New York City continue to create additional violence and prevent the growth of that once great city, this most recent assault on this officer with the Immigration and Custom Enforcement Service is just one indication of the failed policies of de Blasio and the left's determination to drive New York City and the state of New York over the edge. You may have heard of Blexit, that is the black exit from the Democrat Party. The Daily Signal is reporting there is actually now a Black Guns Matter organization. So the founder of Black Guns Matter is speaking out and saying that gun control is about people control. So a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, his name is Maj Tour. He founded this Black Guns Matter organization. He comes from inner city Philadelphia, and he believes that the ability for the citizens in that area to defend themselves against criminals is the best way to deter crime and to keep their neighborhoods safe. Maj makes the point that the left has done a very good job of convincing some urban Americans that firearms aren't for them and that the Second Amendment doesn't relate to them. But he says that his friends across the country are actually being caught up on firearms charges, not because they've robbed anybody or violated the law, as in hurting people and taking their things, but because of the challenges of properly filling out the more complicated paperwork that they have nowadays, and the attempts of cities and states around the country to make even the possession of a firearm not only more difficult, but actually illegal. So he's promoting firearms education, he's promoting safety within neighborhoods, he's promoting protection against the violence, and he's a firm supporter of the Second Amendment. He promotes firearm safety, going to a fire range. Once you legally attain a tool in order to protect yourself, then the need to go to a place where you can safely learn how to use that tool, firearms are tools, and to safely use that firearm and then to learn how to properly protect yourself and your loved ones. He goes on to say that actually a lot of the communities in urban America are conservative in their values. They just don't really understand what the conservative movement is. So another part of education is not just educating people in the importance of the Second Amendment, but educating people in the entire gamut of ideas that compose the conservative ideology itself. So Maj is joining with people like Candace Owens to reach out to the people in the minority community and to get them to understand the benefits of freedom, liberty, and abiding by the Constitution and understanding the freedoms that we have been provided through the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all of the amendments thereof. And so I tip my hat to Maj and the Black Guns Matter movement. I join in his optimism that this is the way to do things and to make a difference, and that we all need to be responsible conservatives and to fight back against the lies and to keep ourselves safe against destruction of the Bill of Rights and the incursion into privacy that is posed by the left. Thank you for watching, and God bless. And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Narrative Analysis Associates, NNAA.